There comes a moment, often quiet, unexpected, when the weight of all you've carried finally presses you to the ground. It isn't loud. It doesn't ask permission. It just comes. Like a silent wave, it crashes into you with the full force of every memory, every disappointment, every scar you thought you had buried deep enough to forget. And in that moment, you think, this must be the end. But Archangel Michael is here to remind you, it's not. Your pain is not the end. It's the beginning of your purpose. This isn't a poetic phrase or a spiritual platitude. It's truth. The kind of truth that burns through the illusions you've been told and the lies you've whispered to yourself. The truth that stands when everything else falls. Michael whispers to your spirit, not with the gentleness of comfort, but with the fire of remembrance. He doesn't come to coddle your wounds. He comes to awaken what you forgot you were, because you didn't come here to live a small, safe life. You didn't come here to drift, to hide, to numb the ache. You came here with a mission. You came here with sacred fire in your bones. And sometimes, the only way to access that fire is for everything else to fall away. Pain isn't punishment, it's initiation. The dark nights, they strip you bare, not to destroy you, but to reveal the parts of you that are indestructible. You see, there's a deeper reason behind the cracks in your heart. They aren't signs of weakness. They're openings, gateways for divine light to enter, to touch the places in you that long to be whole again. Michael says, you are not broken, you are being rebuilt. Each tear has carved out room for more compassion. Each betrayal has revealed what truth really feels like. Each moment you thought you were alone, it was a calling, a summons from the higher realms, asking you to remember that the power within you cannot be extinguished. It can only be forged. But now, you are being asked to remember. You are being called out of your numbness, out of your survival, out of the story that says, this is just the way life is, because it isn't. You are not here by accident. Your soul chose this path, even the painful parts, especially the painful parts. Why? Because they are the very soil from which your purpose will rise. Archangel Michael wants you to know, the purpose isn't something out there. It's born right here, in the raw, unfiltered moments of your becoming. You are never meant to fit in. You are meant to break through the patterns that kept you small, through the generational pain that was never yours to carry, through the voices in your head that say you're not enough. Michael doesn't see your weakness. He sees your warrior spirit. He sees the parts of you that stood back up, even when everything in you said, stay down. He sees the soul behind the struggle. And he reminds you, it's not over. It's just beginning. This is your turning point. Not because everything has gotten easier, but because you are different now. You've seen the inside of your pain, and instead of letting it define you, you've started to understand its language. Pain, when listened to, becomes a compass. It points you back to the parts of you that you abandoned in order to survive. The parts that are still waiting to be reclaimed. This is where your purpose begins. Not in perfection, not in clarity, but in the honest mess of your healing. In the truth that you are still here, still breathing, still choosing to believe that there's more to your story. Michael leans in, his voice steady and full of conviction. Your scars are not proof of failure. They are proof that you were brave enough to live. And now, it's time to use them, to turn your experience into wisdom, to turn your survival into leadership, to turn your pain into purpose, because someone out there is waiting for your story, waiting for your voice, waiting for the exact kind of healing that only you can offer, because only you have walked through what you've walked through. This is sacred. This is holy. And if you're still doubting, if you're still questioning whether your story is worthy, Michael has one more message for you. You are not what happened to you. You are what you choose to become through it. So rise, even if your hands are shaking, even if your voice trembles, even if you're still bleeding, because this is not the end. So rise, even if your hands are shaking, even if your voice trembles, even if you're still bleeding, because this is not the end. It's the sacred breaking open, the one your soul agreed to long before you took your first breath in this lifetime. It's what every healer, every teacher, every light worker has had to walk through, the valley of shadows, and not to escape it, but to find themselves within it. Michael reminds you, you are not being punished, you are being prepared to hold space for others in a way only someone who has been there truly can. Prepared to speak from authenticity, not theory, to carry wisdom, not just words. Because spiritual leadership doesn't come from perfection, it comes from integration. The way you sat with your sorrow, the way you held your own hand in the middle of chaos, the way you didn't give up on yourself when no one else understood what you were going through. That's what makes you powerful. That's what makes you ready. And yet, even now, you might still feel afraid. You might wonder if you're strong enough, if you've healed enough, if you're spiritual enough to step into what you're being called to do. Michael speaks directly into that fear. You don't have to be fully healed to be holy. You just have to be willing. Willing to keep showing up. Willing to tell the truth. Willing to stop pretending that you're fine when you're unraveling inside. Because it's in that rawness, that realness, that others will find the courage to heal too. Your vulnerability is not a weakness. It's your greatest strength. It says, if I can survive this, so can you. It says, you're not alone anymore. And that is how the light spreads. Not in grand sermons or perfect prayers, but in eye contact, in honesty, in the quiet, trembling bravery of one soul reaching out to another and saying, I've been there, let me walk with you. Michael wants you to know, you're not expected to have it all figured out. Your purpose is not a checklist. It's not a title. It's not some far-off destination. It's right here, in the way you choose to love again after heartbreak. In the way you choose to show up after betrayal. In the way you choose to forgive, not because it's easy, but because it sets you free. The world doesn't need more people who appear perfect. It needs more people who are willing to be real. And Michael sees your heart. He sees the way it's been shattered. He sees how many times you tried to silence your voice just to keep the peace. He sees how many dreams you've buried because someone told you they weren't practical. But he's not here to let you stay hidden. He's here to draw your sword out of the dust, to remind you that you are not powerless, that you've never been. Yes, life has knocked you down. Yes, people have hurt you. Yes, you've cried yourself to sleep wondering if any of it even matters. But Michael speaks through the storm and says, your soul was never meant to be small. Your pain carved out a space for purpose to land. And now that space is calling to be filled, not with more pain, but with intention, with presence, with a sacred sense of, I am here for something greater than my suffering. That's what makes this your beginning. And no, it won't be easy. Awakening rarely is. It will cost you your illusions, your comfort zones, the masks you wore to keep others happy. But in return, you get your truth, your freedom, your power. Michael asks you now, what if your pain wasn't a detour, but a map? What if every heartbreak was pointing you toward the people you're meant to help? What if every closed door was redirecting you to something more aligned? What if the very thing that tried to break you was also the thing that would birth your voice? Because the truth is this, pain wakes up what comfort puts to sleep. And now that you're awake, You can't go back. You've seen too much, felt too much, grown too much. So don't look behind you for answers. Don't go back to the spaces that only knew the older version of you. Don't shrink to fit the narratives that once kept you safe, but now suffocate your spirit. You are no longer who you were, and that is not something to grieve. That is something to celebrate. The shedding may feel like loss, but it's actually liberation. You are being called into alignment, and yes, it's uncomfortable. Growth always is. But Michael wants you to know, every part of you that's falling away was never who you truly were. You are not your pain. You are not your past. You are not your mistakes. You are the soul rising through it all. And as you rise, others will rise with you. Not because you're trying to save them, but because your light gives them permission to believe in their own. So keep going. You don't need to know how it all works out. You just need to keep choosing to believe that your life is not random, that your suffering wasn't meaningless, that your story, as messy, sacred, and human as it is, deserves to be told. And when you feel unsure, call on Michael. Feel his presence behind you, strong and unwavering. Picture his sword of light clearing the path ahead, cutting through every lie, every fear, every illusion that tells you you're not ready. Because you are. And this is just the beginning. And this is just the beginning. You may not feel ready. You may not feel worthy. But purpose doesn't wait for perfection. It waits for willingness. And you, even through the trembling, even through the doubt, have shown up. That is everything. Because to show up in the middle of your healing is not weakness. It is sacred bravery. Michael leans in now, closer than before. Not as a distant angel in the heavens, but as a companion on this path. His energy wraps around you like a cloak, not to shield you from the world, but to remind you that you were always protected, even when it felt like you were walking alone. He says, there's a reason you didn't quit. There's a reason you kept getting back up. A reason you survived what others couldn't even imagine. A reason the fire tried to consume you, but it didn't. You were not meant to be burned to ash. You were meant to become something more, refined, transformed, anointed. Because true purpose isn't born in comfort. It's born in fire. It's born in the moments when everything fell apart, but something deeper inside you said, keep going. And that voice wasn't just you. That was your soul remembering. That was Michael's whisper echoing in the chambers of your heart, reminding you this pain will pass, but what you gain from it will last forever. The courage, the clarity, the wisdom. This is what your soul came here to embody, not in theory, but in truth, not in appearances, but in presence. You are not here to impress. You are here to impact. And that impact doesn't begin with massive crowds or grand gestures. It begins in the quiet ways you show up for yourself. The days you choose to honor your truth instead of betray your boundaries. The moments you say no more to the pain that's been recycled through generations. Because this journey is not just about you. It never was. Your healing is a ripple. Every time you choose to heal instead of hate, the energy shifts. Every time you speak your truth, someone else finds their voice. Every time you forgive, the weight lifts, not just from your shoulders, but from the lineage behind you. Michael reminds you, you are a breaker of cycles, a restorer of truth, a bringer of light. And that is not a small thing. It takes courage to be the first in your family to wake up, to feel it all, to face what others ran from, to grieve what no one else was willing to admit was lost, to tell the truth when silence has been the rule for generations. That is spiritual work. That is sacred labor. And Michael honors it. He honors you. He knows the cost of awakening. He knows how lonely the path can feel. He knows how tempting it is to go back to sleep, to shut your heart, to numb the pain, to pretend you don't care. But he also knows what happens when you stay awake. You begin to see the world differently. You begin to feel again, not just your own pain, but the pain of others. And rather than drown in it, you start to transform it. You become a space of safety in a world full of fear. You become a light for the ones who are still walking through the dark. And slowly, without realizing it, you become the very thing you were searching for all along. You become home. Not a perfect home, not a polished Pinterest version of healing, but a real home, a soul who has been to the depths and returned with gifts. Gifts of empathy, of wisdom, of presence. To take the raw material of heartbreak and turn it into healing. To take the silence of your suffering and turn it into song. To take the heaviness you've carried and transform it into strength, not just for yourself, but for everyone who follows after you. Michael sees it all. The strength beneath your sorrow, the light beneath your wounds, the beauty beneath your brokenness. And he smiles, not because you're finished, but because you're finally real. You've stopped pretending. You've stopped waiting for the perfect moment. You've surrendered the need to be ready and instead said yes to the deeper calling. And that yes, that's where everything begins to shift. Because when your soul says yes, truly, fully, despite the fear, the universe begins to move. Doors open, synchronicities appear, support arrives. Not because you forced it, but because you aligned with it. That's what Archangel Michael wants you to remember. You don't chase your purpose, you become it. By healing, by choosing, by surrendering, by rising again and again. And as you rise, so does your purpose. Not because you've arrived at some perfect version of yourself, but because you finally stopped running from who you already are. There is no need to become someone else. The sacred work was always about remembering what your soul already knows. Michael whispers now, not with urgency, but with deep assurance. You came here with this light. You just forgot. The pain made you forget. But now, the remembering begins. And the remembering isn't always soft. Sometimes it shows up as resistance, as loss, as doors slamming shut in every direction. Sometimes it feels like everything you built is falling apart, and that's not a mistake. That is divine dismantling. That is sacred deconstruction, because your soul cannot build on false foundations. And so what falls away is not meant to punish you. It's meant to free you. It's the stripping of everything that was never meant to carry your truth. It's the clearing of space so your real life can begin. Michael wants you to know, every collapse has meaning. Yes, even the betrayals. Yes, even the unanswered prayers. Yes, even the moments that broke your heart open in ways you didn't think you'd survive. Those moments held the seeds of your purpose, not because pain itself is holy, but because what you become through pain is. The resilience, the insight, the capacity to love deeper, with clearer boundaries and a more awakened heart. You didn't come here to be untouched by life. You came here to be transformed by it, to walk through the very things you were once afraid of and realize they didn't break you, they revealed you. They called forth something ancient and eternal from within, something that no title, no status, no recognition can give you, because it was always yours. That is power, not loud, not boastful, but steady, rooted, unshakable. It's the power of someone who knows who they are now, not because someone told them, but because they remembered through the fire. Michael says that fire wasn't your ending. It was your rebirth. And yes, rebirth is messy. It doesn't look glamorous. It looks like crying on the floor at 2 a.m., asking why. It looks like walking away from people who can't meet you in your becoming. It looks like silence, solitude, grief. But it also looks like alignment, like clarity, like finally choosing you, not from selfishness, but from wholeness. Because when you are whole, you don't seek validation. You don't chase healing. You embody it. And in that embodiment, your purpose begins to magnetize. You no longer beg life to love you. You realize life was always loving you through every twist, every break, every divine delay. You stop fighting the flow and start trusting it. Because Michael has been there the whole time, not fixing, not rescuing, but reminding you of your power. He stands with you now, not behind you, but beside you. His sword is not a weapon. It's a symbol of truth, of discernment, of courage. He hands you that sword, not to fight others, but to cut through illusion, to cut ties with what no longer serves you, to sever energetic cords with old identities, old expectations, old pain you've carried like it was yours to keep, because it's not yours anymore. You get to put it down now. You get to rewrite the story now. Michael says, the pain was real, but it's not the whole truth. The whole truth is you rose. You rose when you didn't think you could. You kept loving even after being shattered. You kept going even when no one clapped or noticed. That's divine. That's holy. That's the kind of strength this world is starved for. And now it's time to bring that strength forward. Not to impress, not to perform, but to serve. Not out of obligation, but out of overflow. You've healed enough to begin. You don't need to be fully ready. You just need to be available. Available to your calling. Available to the synchronicities. Available to the people whose lives will be changed, simply because you showed up in your truth. They're coming. The ones who will see you. The ones who won't ask you to shrink. The ones who are looking for the exact light you've cultivated through your pain. And when they find you, it won't feel like effort. It'll feel like resonance. Because purpose is not about trying. It's about aligning. It's not about doing more. It's about being more you. And if you still feel unworthy, still feel unsure, Michael reminds you, purpose is not earned. It's remembered. And you, right now, as you are worthy of remembering. Let that land. You don't need to perform for the divine. You just need to return to your center, your knowing, your breath. And from that space, everything begins to move in harmony. Because when one soul remembers who they are, they become a mirror for others to do the same. That's the ripple you're creating. So don't underestimate the power of your healing. Don't dismiss the wisdom of your pain. And don't delay the call that's echoing through your being, asking you to step out, not when you're perfect, but because you're real. And the world needs more real than ever. And the world needs more real than ever. More souls who have walked through the fire and didn't lose their hearts. More voices that don't preach from pedestals, but speak from lived truth. More people who aren't trying to be spiritual, they're just trying to be whole. And that's where you are now. You're not here to convince anyone of your worth. You're not here to prove anything to the world. You're here to remember, to embody, to walk in your truth, not for applause, but because your soul has waited lifetimes for this moment. Archangel Michael reminds you, your story is sacred, not despite the pain, but because of how you transmuted it. There is alchemy in what you've done. You took shame and turned it into empathy. You took rejection and turned it into sovereignty. You took grief and turned it into purpose. That's not accidental. That's mastery. Not the kind they teach in books or seminars. This is soul mastery. The kind forged in silence, in heartbreak, in the long, sleepless nights where you met yourself raw and unfiltered, and chose to keep going. And now, the universe honors that choice, not by handing you some overnight miracle, but by aligning you with moments, with people, with experiences that reflect back the truth of who you've become. It's all energy. It always has been. When you shift within, everything around you begins to respond. Not always immediately, not always obviously, but inevitably, because truth cannot stay hidden forever. Light cannot be denied. Michael wants you to know, the more real you become, the more magnetic you are, not in a flashy, surface-level way, but in a way that speaks to the soul. You start to draw in connections that don't require translation, opportunities that don't require compromise, paths that feel less like striding and more like flow. Because when your external world matches your internal frequency, that's when purpose becomes presence. And yet, even now, you may feel moments of doubt. That's okay. Let them come. Let them wash through you like waves. You don't have to fight your humanity to be spiritual. You don't have to be high vibe all the time. You just have to stay honest with yourself. Honest when you're tired. Honest when you're afraid. Honest when you need rest, not another round of pushing. That honesty is what keeps you anchored. Michael sees your fatigue. He knows you've carried more than your share, emotionally, energetically, ancestrally. And he speaks now with clarity and love. You are allowed to rest. You are allowed to receive. You don't have to earn your worth anymore. Read that again. You don't have to keep striving just to feel like you matter. You already do. You matter when you're shining and when you're silent. You matter when you're rising and when you're resting. You matter simply because you exist. Your purpose isn't something you chase. It's something you reveal, layer by layer, as you come back to yourself. So take a breath. You've already done so much, more than anyone knows. And the next chapter isn't about proving anything. It's about living from the deep well of wisdom you've uncovered within. You know who you are now. You may not have all the answers, but you have clarity. You may not know the full map, but you have direction. You may still be healing, but you are ready. Because healing doesn't mean finished. It means aligned. Aligned with truth. Aligned with your soul. Aligned with the version of you that refuses to settle for less than divine authenticity. And in that alignment, your energy shifts. Your presence shifts. Your impact shifts. Not because you tried harder, but because you surrendered deeper. Michael reminds you, surrender is not giving up. It's giving in to what was always meant for you. When you surrender the fight to prove, to fix, to force, something else emerges. Grace. And grace is not passive. Grace is powerful. Grace says, I trust the timing. I trust the unfolding. I trust my worth, even when the evidence hasn't shown up yet. That is faith. That is devotion. And that is how purpose lives. Not in performance, but in presence. Not in the highlight reel, but in the quiet consistency of being real. You don't have to rush. You don't have to hustle. You just have to keep choosing truth over fear, love over numbness, presence over perfection. That's where your legacy is being written, in the ever. In the way you speak to yourself, in the way you hold space for others, in the way you choose to stay open when it would be easier to shut down. That's purpose in motion. It's not always loud. Sometimes it's just the way you breathe a little deeper, the way you light a candle and whisper a prayer, the way you honor your intuition, even when it makes no sense to anyone else. Michael wants you to know, that is holy, that is enough. That is you stepping into who you've always been. And as you do, the world shifts. Not all at once, not with thunder or lightning, but gently, steadily, like the dawn breaking through after a long, dark night. You are the dawn now. You are the dawn now. Not because you tried to become light, but because you remembered that you've always been it. Through every heartbreak, through every sleepless night, through every quiet prayer no one heard but the heavens, you were becoming. And now, the becoming gives way to being who you are, being rooted in truth, being fully alive, not in spite of your pain, but because of what it revealed to you. That's what Archangel Michael has been guiding you toward all along. Not perfection, not performance, but embodiment. Because the most powerful light in this world is not the one that shines without ever flickering. It's the one that keeps shining after the storm. You've been through storms. Some took everything. Others stripped you bare. But you're still here. And not just here, you're present, awake, clearer than you've ever been. And Michael's voice now is soft but unshakable. It carries the tone of completion, of truth anchored deep in the soul. This is your time now. You are no longer waiting for the world to validate you. You are no longer looking outside to find what already lives within. You've walked through the fire. Now walk in your power. Because yes, pain shaped you, but it didn't define you. You're not just the survivor of your story. You are the sacred witness, the soul who said yes, the one who came back from the edge, not just to live, but to lead. Not the kind of leadership that needs a platform or an audience, but the kind of leadership that begins with how you move through the world, with how you hold space for yourself, with how you embody compassion, even when you're still healing. That's divine leadership. That's what the world needs more of now. Not more experts, but more elders, more people who carry wisdom, not because they read it, but because they lived it. That's you. You're stepping into that role, not because you have it all figured out, but because you finally trust yourself to hold the unknown. And in that trust, your soul expands. It stretches beyond timelines, beyond identities, beyond past narratives. It returns to what it always was, eternal, whole, and unbreakable. And that return, that's where your true purpose lives. Not out there, not someday, but here, now, in your breath, in your body, in your being. You don't have to search anymore. Michael wants you to breathe that in. Let it settle. You are no longer searching. You are remembering. And now, you are ready. Ready to love again, not just others, but yourself. Ready to serve not from depletion, but from overflow. Ready to speak not with fear, but with clarity and truth. You're not who you were before the pain. You're someone deeper, wiser, more sacred. And no, it wasn't easy. But your soul didn't come here for easy. It came here for expansion. It came here to evolve. And it came here to serve. Not through martyrdom, not through self-abandonment, but through embodied presence. Because presence is the portal. When you become a vessel for divine will. You become the hands of healing, the voice of remembrance, the anchor for peace in a chaotic world. That is your role now, not in theory, but in action. And that action begins with each sacred step you take in alignment with your truth. Each yes that feels honest, each no that protects your peace. That is how the path unfolds, not all at once, but one sacred decision at a time. And as you continue walking it, you'll start to feel it. You're not walking alone. You never were. Michael has been beside you through it all, not to rescue you, but to remind you of the divine within you, to show you what you're capable of when you trust the process, when you trust yourself. And now, he smiles, not because your journey is over, but because you finally remembered that it has just begun. The real work now is joy, not forced happiness, but earned joy. Joy that rises from the ashes of all you've released. Joy that honor. Joy that knows pain and still chooses to dance. That is freedom. That is purpose. That is the life you came here to live, not in survival mode, but in sacred wholeness. So go forward now, not with fear, but with fire in your spirit. Let the past stay in the past. Let your voice rise. Let your presence speak before you say a word. Let your light guide others, not by force, but by example. Because this is who you are now. A vessel, a healer, a lighthouse. You are the one others have been waiting for. And now that you've remembered, nothing can stop what's coming. So breathe deep, open your heart, stand tall in your truth, and walk forward, not as someone who's been broken, but as someone who is always destined to rise.